annual Morrison family Thanksgiving had always been a showcase of success. This year was no different, except that my sister Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement over her latest career breakthrough. "The merger is almost final," she announced, cutting into her turkey with precise, manicured strokes. "Once Stone Global partners with our firm, I'll be heading the entire West Coast division." I hid my smile behind a sip of wine. Stone Global, the mysterious tech consulting giant that had the business world buzzing. The company Jessica had been trying to court for months. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom beamed. "Another brilliant achievement. You always did know how to aim high." Dad nodded approvingly. "Takes after me, she does. Born with business sense." Then, like clockwork, they all turned to me with their usual mix of pity and disappointment. I learned to recognize the exact moment it would happen at these family gatherings. Right after praising the successful child, time to check on the failure. "And how's your job going, Diana?" Mom asked delicately, as if the word might break if she said it too forcefully. "Still at that reception desk," Jessica added with a smirk. "What company was it again? I can never remember." "Palmer Technologies," I said quietly, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. "And yes, still answering phones." Jessica's smirk widened. 8 years now, isn't it? Well, I suppose someone has to do it. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real corporate success. If she only knew that her precious merger depended entirely on my signature, not that she ever discovered Stone Global was just one of my company's many aliases. The truth was almost too delicious to keep to myself. Almost. Speaking of Palmer Technologies, our cousin Michael chimed in. "Didn't they just get acquired by some bigger firm? Hope you don't lose your job, Diana. Though I'm sure Jessica could find you something entry-level at her company." I nodded vaguely, remembering the acquisition papers I'd signed last week. Palmer Technologies was indeed under new ownership, mine, just like the other 12 companies I'd quietly purchased over the past 5 years. The story of how I built my empire while my family thought I was just a receptionist started 8 years ago, though the seeds were planted much earlier. Growing up in the Morrison family meant constant pressure to follow the approved path. Prestigious business school, corporate ladder, corner office with a view. Jessica embraced it wholeheartedly. I had different ideas. Computer science. Dad had exploded when I announced my college major. "What kind of career can you build with that? You need a business degree to succeed in this world." Mom had been more subtle in her disapproval, but just as firm. "Darling, wouldn't you rather follow your sister's path? Look how well she's doing at Harvard Business School." But I stuck to my choice. While Jessica was memorizing business theories, I was learning to code. While she networked at cocktail parties, I built programs that would revolutionize how companies handled data security. By graduation, I had developed an encryption algorithm that caught the attention of several major tech firms. I sold it for $2 million, but not to any of the obvious buyers. Instead, I worked through shell companies and intermediaries, keeping my name out of every transaction. That was when I learned the power of anonymity. In the tech world, especially in cybersecurity, being unknown was an asset. Companies would pay premium prices to mysterious developers who could solve their problems without wanting public credit. So I started my first company under a different name, then another, and another. Each one specialized in a different aspect of tech consulting, but all operated under the umbrella of my main corporation, which would eventually become Stone Global. The receptionist job at Palmer Technologies was originally just a cover story to appease my family. I needed something believable, something that would keep them from asking too many questions about my real work. But it turned into something far more valuable, an inside view of how traditional companies operated and, more importantly, failed. I watched as Palmer's management made mistake after mistake, missing opportunities that were obvious to anyone paying attention. When their stock price started to fall, I was ready. Through one of my shell companies, I began buying shares. Quietly, strategically, never enough at once to raise suspicion. The same pattern played out with other companies. While Jessica climbed a corporate ladder the traditional way, I was building a web of interconnected businesses, each piece carefully hidden behind layers of corporate anonymity. "More turkey, Diana?" Mom's voice pulled me back to the present. "Though you should be careful, receptionists need to maintain a professional appearance." I accepted the extra serving, thinking about the memo I needed to review after dinner. The one about Jessica's company and their desperate attempt to partner with Stone Global. The irony was almost too perfect. You know, Jessica said, reaching for her wine glass, my firm is launching a new tech division. We might need someone to handle the phones. Would you be interested in a change? The pay would probably be better than what you're making now. I thought about my net worth, currently hovering around $3.8 billion, and managed not to laugh. I'm comfortable where I am, but thanks. Comfortable, she sighed. That's your problem, Diana. You've never pushed yourself to achieve anything more. You're too comfortable being ordinary. Dad shook his head. At least she has steady work. Though I still think you could have done more with your life if you'd listened to us about business school. I took another sip of wine, remembering the latest Forbes article about Stone Global, the mysterious tech giant reshaping the industry. The reporter had tried for weeks to uncover the identity of the founder, speculating about various high-profile tech moguls and business leaders. No one had even come close to guessing it might be the quiet woman who supposedly answered phones at Palmer Technologies. Jessica, Mom said eagerly, tell us more about this merger with Stone Global. It sounds so exciting. My sister straightened up, preening. Well, I can't reveal too much, but let's just say I've been personally handling the negotiations. The CEO is very impressed with my proposals. I nearly choked on my wine. I had never even spoken to Jessica. All communication was handled through various executives and lawyers. Her proposals had been uniformly terrible, but I kept the process going because I needed access to her firm's client list. They're extremely selective about their partnerships, Jessica continued. The fact that they're even considering us is a huge compliment to my leadership. More like a testament to their due diligence, I muttered under my breath. What was that? Jessica asked sharply. Nothing, I smiled. Just thinking about how selective some companies can be. She narrowed her eyes. Well, it's not something you'd understand, given your position. Corporate strategy at this level is quite complex. If she only knew how many times I'd sat in my private boardroom, reviewing her company's painfully amateurish merger proposals, or how many of her brilliant innovations had made my executive team cringe. Speaking of positions, my Aunt Martha chimed in. Didn't you used to do something with computers, Diana? In college? Computer science degree, Dad grunted. Never did anything with it, though. I thought about the 3 patents currently revolutionizing cybersecurity, all registered under various shell companies, about the encryption software protecting government agencies around the world, about the artificial intelligence system I developed that was quietly transforming how global corporations handled data. Never really found my niche in tech, I said mildly, passing the cranberry sauce. As dinner wound down, Jessica couldn't resist one more dig. Don't worry, Diana. Not everyone is cut out for success. Someone has to answer the phones, right? I smiled, thinking about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, the one where Stone Global's CEO would finally be revealed to her firm's management team. You're absolutely right, I said. Someone has to answer the phones. By the way, good luck with that merger. I have a feeling tomorrow's meeting will be very illuminating. Jessica raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Her eyes widened as she read the message. The Stone Global CEO is coming to tomorrow's meeting in person, she gasped. This is huge. They never make personal appearances. Mom clapped her hands in delight. Oh, Jessica, they must be really impressed with you. Well, I said, standing up, I should head home. Early day tomorrow. Lots of phones to answer. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family thought was a modest studio in a questionable neighborhood, I couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would certainly be interesting. My phone buzzed with a message from my executive assistant. Final merger documents are ready for your review, Ms. Morrison. Also, the Forbes reporter is still trying to schedule an interview with Stone Global's mysterious CEO. I texted back, tell Forbes I'll consider an interview next week, but first we have a merger meeting to attend. Tomorrow, Jessica would finally learn who really owned the company she'd been trying so desperately to impress. Tomorrow, my family would discover that their ordinary daughter had built an empire while they weren't looking. But tonight, I was just Diana, the receptionist who didn't amount to much. And somehow, that made tomorrow's revelation even sweeter. The next morning, I arrived at Jessica's firm 30 minutes early, not as the CEO of Stone Global, But as Diana, the receptionist, wearing the same modest clothes I'd worn to Thanksgiving dinner, the security guard barely glanced at me as I walked through the lobby. My executive team was already in place, scattered throughout the building in various roles. My CFO posed as a maintenance worker. My head of operations sat in the lobby reading a newspaper. My chief legal officer was disguised as a coffee cart vendor. At precisely 9:55 a.m., Jessica strutted through the lobby in her designer suit, not even noticing me sitting quietly in the corner. She was too busy barking orders into her phone. I want everything perfect for this meeting. The Stone Global CEO never makes personal appearances. This is our chance to really impress them. I smiled, remembering how many times I'd reviewed her company's proposals, each one more desperate than the last. They needed this merger badly. Their last 3 quarters had been disastrous, though they'd managed to keep that quiet. At 10 a.m. sharp, I stood up and walked to the elevator. Jessica was already in the conference room with her management team, probably rehearsing her presentation one last time. I changed in my private elevator, the one installed secretly during the building's last renovation. The modest dress was replaced by a tailored Armani suit. The simple ponytail became an elegant updo. Even my posture changed, transforming from the apologetic slouch of someone used to being overlooked to the confident stance of a woman who owned everything around her. My executive team converged on the conference room floor, shedding their disguises as they walked. By the time we reached the doors, we were no longer playing parts. We were Stone Global's leadership, ready to reveal exactly who they'd been trying to impress all these months. The room fell silent as we entered. Jessica stood at the head of the table, her presentation ready to go. Her smile faltered slightly as she saw me. "Diana, what are you doing here? This is a private meeting." I walked to the other end of the table, my team arranging themselves around me. "Hello, Jessica, Mom, Dad." Our parents sat along one side of the table. Jessica had invited them to witness her moment of triumph. "Perfect. I don't understand," Jessica stammered. "Where is the CEO of Stone Global?" "You're looking at her," I said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. Jessica's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Mom dropped her designer handbag. Dad's face went from red to white to red again. "That's impossible." Jessica finally managed. "You're a receptionist. You answer phones at Palmer Technologies." Actually, my CFO interjected smoothly. "Ms. Morrison owns Palmer Technologies, along with 12 other major tech companies. Stone Global is just one division of her larger corporation." I sat down at the head of the table, enjoying the way Jessica's perfect posture had crumbled into shocked slumping. "Palmer Technologies was my first acquisition," I explained. "I kept the receptionist story as a cover while I built something bigger, something none of you could see because you were too busy feeling sorry for me." But, Mom sputtered. All these years, I continued, "I've been building an empire while you thought I was just answering phones. Every time you pitied me, every time you made jokes about my wasted potential, I was signing deals worth more than this entire building." My chief legal officer passed out folders. "These are the real merger terms. As you'll see, they're quite different from what you were expecting." Jessica finally found her voice. "This is some kind of joke. Some kind of trick. Check the business registrations," I suggested mildly. "The patents. The corporate filings. Stone Global's founder and CEO has always been Diana Morrison. I just never bothered to correct anyone's assumptions about who I was or what I did." Dad grabbed one of the folders, his hands shaking as he read. "These numbers. This is currently valued at just over $3.8 billion. My CFO supplied helpfully. "Though that's a conservative estimate." "The computer science degree," Mom whispered, "the one we told you was worthless, led to 3 major patents in cybersecurity. The encryption software I developed is now used by governments worldwide. The artificial intelligence system I created has transformed corporate data management." I leaned forward. "Still think I should have gone to business school." Jessica slumped in her chair, her perfect facade cracking completely. "All those proposals I sent, you were reading them. Every painful word," I confirmed. "Though I particularly enjoyed the one where you claimed to understand the future of tech security, especially since you were using my software to write it." "Why?" she demanded. "Why keep up this pretense? Why let us think?" Because you taught me something valuable, I cut in. All of you did. You taught me that people see what they expect to see. You expected me to be a failure, so that's what you saw. It was the perfect cover for building something extraordinary. I stood up, smoothing my designer suit. Now about this merger. The terms are non-negotiable. Your company will become a subsidiary of Stone Global, with significant management changes. I looked directly at Jessica, starting with your position. You're firing me, she gasped. Not exactly. I'm demoting you to where you should have started, an entry-level position where you can learn the business properly, not just play at being an executive. Dad started to protest, but I held up my hand. This isn't personal, Dad, it's business. Isn't that what you always taught us? The next hour was a blur of contracts, terms, and shocked realizations. My parents sat in stunned silence as their worldview completely inverted. Jessica alternated between anger and disbelief as she realized her career had been in my hands all along. As the meeting wound down, Mom finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why reveal yourself now? Why not stay hidden? I smiled, gathering my papers. Because sometimes success isn't just about building something great. Sometimes it's about showing the people who doubted you exactly what they failed to see. Walking out of the conference room, I paused by Jessica's chair. By the way, the reception desk at Palmer Technologies, it's actually empty. I never worked there. I own the building. The drive home that evening was surprisingly peaceful. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members who'd heard the news. Cousins who'd mocked my dead-end job now wanted to know if I was hiring. Aunts and uncles who'd used me as a cautionary tale suddenly remembered how they'd always believed in me. I ignored them all, instead calling my real estate agent about a new property I'd been eyeing. Coincidentally, right next door to Jessica's house. The one she'd been so proud of buying with her executive salary. A week later, I sat in my real office, the top floor of the Stone Global building, reading the latest Forbes article about the tech industry's most surprising CEO. The reporter had finally gotten their interview, and the story of the secret billionaire receptionist was making waves. My assistant buzzed in. Your sister is here to see you. She says it's about her new position. I smiled, remembering all the times Jessica had made me wait in lobbies. Tell her she can schedule an appointment with HR like everyone else. Sometimes success isn't about proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about letting them discover just how wrong they've been, all on their own. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Thanksgiving dinner this year, will you still come? I thought about it for a moment, then replied, of course. But this time, I'm hosting. At my real house. After all, what's the point of building an empire if you can't enjoy watching people realize they've been eating dinner with a billionaire who they thought just answered phones? The best revenge isn't served cold. It's served in a penthouse office with a view of the city you secretly own, watching people realize that the sister they pitied now signs their paychecks. And somewhere in a Stone Global building, there's still an empty reception desk. A reminder that success doesn't always look the way people expect it to. Sometimes it looks like a quiet woman in modest clothes, sitting in the corner, building an empire while everyone else is too busy feeling superior to notice. Fluorescent lights of Tech Dynamics' open-plan office buzzed overhead as I cleaned out my desk. Around me, former colleagues stared at their screens, deliberately avoiding eye contact. Only my desktop succulent, a hardy little plant that had survived 3 years of corporate politics, was making the journey with me from the engineering department to the maintenance closet. My name is Alex Chen, and at 28, I'd just been demoted from senior software engineer to janitor, all because I refused to give CEO Marcus Sterling what he wanted, full credit for my work. Need help carrying your things to your new office, Alex? Derek Sterling, the CEO's nephew and my immediate supervisor, smirked as he passed by. Though I guess it's just a closet now. I carefully wrapped my succulent in paper. I've got it, thanks. The past 6 months at Tech Dynamic had been a masterclass in corporate toxicity. What started as subtle credit stealing had evolved into outright harassment after I'd refused to let Marcus Sterling put his name on my quantum encryption algorithm. Now, instead of firing me, which would have violated my contract and given me grounds for a lawsuit, they'd found a more creative way to push me out. All employees must be utilized according to their demonstrated capabilities. Marcus had announced at this morning's all-hands meeting, and Alex Chen has demonstrated that they're better suited to maintenance than engineering. The laughter still echoed in my ears. 3 years of innovative solutions, successful projects, and glowing client reviews, all erased because I wouldn't play by Sterling's rules. What no one at Tech Dynamic knew, what no one could know yet, was that I'd seen this coming months ago. More importantly, I'd prepared for it. In the maintenance office, Joe Martinez, the actual head of maintenance, helped me set up a small desk in the corner. "This isn't right, Alex. You're the best engineer we've got." "Thanks, Joe." I placed my succulent on the metal desk. "But maybe they're right. Maybe I am better suited for maintenance." Joe's weathered face crinkled with concern. He'd been at Tech Dynamic for 20 years, keeping the building's systems running while executives like Sterling took credit for others' innovations. We'd become friends during my late-night coding sessions, when he'd bring me coffee and share stories about all the corporate drama he'd witnessed over the years. "You're up to something," he said quietly. "I know that look." I smiled, just focusing on my new responsibilities. "Oh-ha." He didn't believe me, but he also didn't push. That's what I liked about Joe. He understood the value of keeping certain cards close to your chest. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Emily Wong at Quantum Dynamics, Tech Dynamics' biggest client and competitor. "Patent office confirmed. Announcement on schedule for Monday. You ready?" "All set," I replied, thinking about the encrypted hard drive hidden in my apartment. 2 years of work, thousands of lines of code, and dozens of sleepless nights had led to this moment. The maintenance office had a small window overlooking the parking lot. I watched Marcus Sterling climb into his Tesla, probably heading to another business dinner where he'd take credit for his employees' innovations. He'd built his reputation and fortune on that practice, finding talented engineers, pressuring them to sign over their work, then discarding them when they resisted. I'd known about Sterling's methods before I took the job at Tech Dynamic. In fact, it was exactly why I'd chosen this company 3 years ago, fresh out of my PhD program at MIT. While my classmates had chased positions at Google and Apple, I deliberately picked a mid-sized firm with a CEO known for stealing innovations. Because sometimes to catch a thief, you have to let them think they're the smartest person in the room. That evening, as I cleaned the engineering department's floors, watching my former teammates pack up for the day, Derek stopped by for one final taunt. "You know," he said, leaning against a desk, "you could have had it all. Uncle Marcus would have made you rich if you just played along. Now look at you." I ran the mop under his expensive shoes, forcing him to step back. "We all end up where we belong, Derek." He laughed. "Keep telling yourself that while you're scrubbing toilets." After everyone left, I sat in my maintenance office, reviewing the email I'd received from my patent attorney earlier that day. Everything was in place. The application I'd filed 2 years ago, long before I'd ever shown my quantum encryption algorithm to anyone at Tech Dynamic, had been approved. The timing couldn't have been better. Joe came in with 2 cups of coffee. "Want to talk about it?" I took a cup, inhaling the familiar aroma. "You ever play chess, Joe?" "Used to. Not much time these days. My grandfather taught me," I said, thinking about the lessons that had brought me here. "He always said the most important moves are the ones you make before your opponent knows the game has started." Joe's eyes sparkled with understanding. "And when did this game start, Alex?" 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days ago, when I first read about Marcus Sterling's pattern of stealing patents from his engineers. I pulled up an article on my phone, one of many about Sterling's business practices, most focused on his genius for spotting innovative technology. A few mentioned the string of engineers who'd left the company under mysterious circumstances. None had managed to prove anything. "The thing about men like Sterling," I continued, "is that they're so used to taking what they want, they never stop to ask why someone would make it so easy to take." Joe leaned back, realization dawning. "The algorithm you've been working on, the one they've been pressuring you about," I nodded, "is a trap. A very elaborate, very carefully designed trap. And they're about to spring it?" "No," I said, checking my watch. "They already have. They just don't know it yet." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Dr. Wong. "Board meeting concluded. Press release approved. Monday will be interesting." Joe studied my face. "You know, in 20 years, I've seen a lot of people try to fight back against Sterling. None of them won." "That's because they tried to fight him directly," I said, standing to begin my evening cleaning rounds. "But the best way to beat someone like Sterling isn't to fight them. It's to let them believe they've already won. As I pushed my cleaning cart through Tech Dynamics' quiet halls, I thought about all the nights I'd spent here, allegedly working on the algorithms Sterling wanted so badly. In reality, I've been laying groundwork for something much bigger. Every line of code, every technical document, every presentation had been carefully crafted for this moment. Monday morning, when Quantum Dynamics made their announcement, Marcus Sterling would learn an expensive lesson about underestimating the people he thought he could use and discard. But for now, I had floors to mop and trash cans to empty. After all, a good chess player knows that sometimes the best position on the board looks like the worst. And I had 48 hours until checkmate. Monday morning arrived with the kind of perfect clarity that only comes before a storm. I was polishing the glass doors of Tech Dynamics' lobby when Marcus Sterling strode in, tablet in hand, radiating the smug confidence of a man who thought he owned not just the building, but everyone in it. "Chen," he barked. "There's a scuff mark by the elevator. Take care of it." I nodded, hiding my smile as I checked my watch. 8:47 a.m. Quantum Dynamics press conference would begin in exactly 13 minutes. The lobby began filling with employees heading to their morning meetings. Direk arrived, already looking at his phone as he walked toward the executive elevator. He stopped suddenly, frowning at his screen. "Uncle Marcus," he called out, "you need to see this." I kept polishing the glass, watching their reflections as they huddled over Derek's phone. Their expressions shifted from confusion to concern to something approaching panic. "Get legal on the phone," Marcus snapped. "Now." 8:55 a.m., right on schedule. By 9 o'clock a.m., Tech Dynamics lobby had transformed into chaos. Executives rushed between offices, phones rang incessantly, and a crowd had gathered around the wall-mounted TV displaying CNBC's tech news coverage. Breaking news from the quantum computing sector, the anchor announced. Quantum Dynamics has announced a revolutionary breakthrough in encryption technology. CEO Dr. Emily Wang is live at their headquarters to demonstrate what they're calling the future of data security. The camera cut to Dr. Wang, standing before a packed auditorium. "What we're unveiling today isn't just an improvement in encryption. It's a fundamental paradigm shift in how we protect digital information." Marcus Sterling's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. The algorithm she was describing, the one being demonstrated on screens behind her, looked remarkably similar to the one I'd been developing at Tech Dynamic, the one Sterling had been pressuring me to sign over to him. But there were crucial differences. Differences that only someone with a PhD in quantum computing would notice. Differences that made this version significantly more advanced than what I'd shown Tech Dynamic. Most importantly, Dr. Wang continued, "This technology is fully protected by patents filed over 2 years ago by its original inventor." The presentation screen changed to display a patent document. There was my name, clear as day, primary inventor, Alex Chen, Ph.D. The lobby fell silent. Every head turned toward where I stood with my cleaning supplies. "You." Marcus Sterling's voice shook with rage. "My office. Now." I carefully placed my cleaning supplies in their designated spot. "Of course, sir. Though you might want to see the rest of Dr. Wang's presentation first." On screen, Dr. Wang was explaining the partnership aspects of the patent. "This technology will be licensed exclusively through Quantum Dynamics, with strict ethical guidelines for its implementation. We're particularly excited about its applications in protecting personal privacy and preventing corporate espionage." Sterling's face went from purple to ash white as she continued. "We've already identified several instances of attempted theft of this technology, including," she paused for effect, "documented cases of corporate executives attempting to pressure the inventor into surrendering the rights." The display behind her showed emails, meeting recordings, and documentation. All the evidence I'd been carefully collecting for 2 years. Every attempt by Sterling and his nephews to steal my work. Every threat. Every instance of harassment, all meticulously archived and timestamped. "Security," Sterling barked. "Escort Chen out of the building." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "you might want to hold off on that." I showed him the email I just received from Tech Dynamics Board of Directors, requesting my immediate presence at an emergency meeting. It seems we're both expected upstairs. The next few hours were a blur of revelations. In the boardroom, I explained how I developed 2 versions of the encryption algorithm. The first, the one I'd shown Tech Dynamic, was real but intentionally flawed. Any attempt to implement it would have exposed user data instead of protecting it. The actual working version had been developed in secret, patented early, and licensed to Quantum Dynamics. You deliberately deceived this company, Sterling accused. No, I corrected him. I deliberately created a honeypot to catch a corporate thief. Every attempt you made to steal my work was documented and will be included in the SEC investigation that begins. I checked my watch. Right about now. On cue, the boardroom door opened to admit 2 FBI agents and a representative from the Securities and Exchange Commission. Mr. Sterling, one agent began, we have some questions about a pattern of intellectual property theft at Tech Dynamic. What followed was the corporate equivalent of a controlled demolition. As federal agents combed through Tech Dynamics records, more victims of Sterling's patent theft scheme came forward. Former employees revealed similar stories of stolen innovations and forced resignations. By evening, Marcus Sterling had been suspended pending investigation. Direk and several other executives were placed on administrative leave. The board appointed an interim CEO, Dr. Sarah Martinez, a respected engineer who left Tech Dynamic years ago after her own clash with Sterling. I have to ask, Dr. Martinez said when we met the next day. Why go through all this? Why not just take your algorithm straight to Quantum Dynamics? I thought about all the brilliant engineers whose innovations Sterling had stolen, whose careers he derailed. Because sometimes stopping a thief isn't enough. You have to change the system that enabled them. The changes came quickly after that. Tech Dynamics board instituted new policies protecting engineers' intellectual property rights. The company established an ethics committee with real power to investigate complaints. And most importantly, they created a fund to compensate former employees whose innovations had been stolen. Joe found me in my maintenance office, packing up my few belongings. So what's next for the chess master? I smiled, picking up my succulent. Quantum Dynamics offered me a position heading their new security division, but I think I might stay here instead. Here? He looked surprised. After everything? Dr. Martinez offered me a role as Chief Innovation Officer, focusing on fostering ethical technology development. I showed him the offer letter. Plus, someone needs to help rebuild this company the right way. And the algorithm, the patent, will be licensed fairly with profits shared among all contributors. I thought about the trust fund I'd established with the licensing fees, dedicated to helping young engineers protect their innovations. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying something corrupt, it's about building something better in its place. 1 year later, I stood at a podium in Tech Dynamics Auditorium, addressing a new class of engineering interns. The company had transformed. Under Dr. Martinez's leadership, we become known for ethical innovation and engineer empowerment. Our stock price had actually increased once investors realized that sustainable success was more profitable than stolen shortcuts. The most valuable thing you have isn't your code or your patents, I told the interns. It's your integrity. Guard it as carefully as you guard your innovations. Marcus Sterling eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of intellectual property theft. Direk and several other executives faced civil penalties. But more importantly, their downfall sparked an industry-wide conversation about corporate ethics and inventor rights. These days, when I pass the maintenance office, I always stop to chat with Joe. He keeps a chessboard in there now, and sometimes we play a game after hours. He's gotten quite good, especially at the long strategic plays. You know what I still don't understand? He said during one of our games. How did you know Sterling would take the bait? What if he actually respected your rights to the algorithm? I moved my queen into position for checkmate. People like Sterling are predictable precisely because they think they're clever. They're so used to taking what they want, they never stop to question why something valuable is left unprotected. Like leaving your queen exposed. Exactly. I smiled as he saw the trap too late. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to guard your most valuable piece, it's to make it look vulnerable while you set up the real victory. My office now has a view of Lake Washington, but I kept the succulent from my maintenance desk. It sits next to my PhD diploma and the framed patent document, reminding me that sometimes you have to be willing to look powerless to achieve real power. Last week, a young engineer from another company reached out for advice about a supervisor trying to steal her innovation. I took her to coffee and shared my story. By the end of our conversation, she had a plan to protect her work and the confidence to stand her ground. Because that's the thing about corporate thieves. They only win when we believe their position makes them invincible. But true innovation, like true justice, doesn't come from power or position. It comes from the willingness to think differently, to play the long game, and sometimes to clean a few floors while waiting for checkmate. Marcus Sterling thought he was demoting an engineer to janitor. Instead, he promoted me to the one position I needed to expose decades of corruption. Now, every time I walk into Tech Dynamics' lobby, I look at the company's new mission statement etched in the glass: Innovation with Integrity. Below it in smaller letters is a quote I suggested: "The best innovations come from those who understand every level of a system." It makes me smile every time I read it. After all, some of the most important work I ever did here was with a mop in my hands. And some of the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what you did.